to switch themselves right now or thinking about doing it. So what better time to help you all have an easier and better transition than I did. For those of you who don't know, yes, I used to play on console. I started playing Fortnite on PS4 way back in December of 2017, which was Season 2. I was a decent player on console. At the time, I'd definitely say I was pretty goated on the sticks. I stayed on console for about 6 months until I felt playing on controller was just holding me back. I was never really that comfortable on controller, and I basically realized that I reached a plateau in how good I could get. For everyone wondering, I played normally, so no claw or scuff controller or paddles or anything like that, which was probably why I wasn't as good as a lot of the insane controller players we know today. Back then, I was also watching a ton of pro players stream on Twitch, who of course all played on keyboard and mouse on PC, so I made the decision to switch over. Initially, I bought a keyboard, mouse, and mousepad, but didn't have a PC yet, so I used them on console. That's where the majority of the background gameplay you'll see is from. What you're watching is literally my first 2 or 3 weeks on keyboard and mouse back in Season 5. After that, it took me around a month to buy all my PC parts, build my PC, and then fully switch over. Now it's been a full year, and I can say for certain it was worth it. Fortnite and just gaming in general is better on PC, and I'm 10 times the player I ever was on console. But there are a few things I wish I could have done differently and that I wish I had known before I switched. The first thing I wish I knew was the importance of optimizing your keybinds and settings from early on. When you first make the switch over to keyboard and mouse, you'll have absolutely no clue what keybinds to use. I was the same way, but what I didn't have and what you guys have now is a ton more resources on how you can optimize and get the best keybinds possible. Back in Season 5 when I started to play on keyboard and mouse, most people were still under the impression that any keybinds were good. As long as you could physically hit a keybind, then you might as well use it. Even if you only felt comfortable using one finger for all your binds, it didn't matter because building wasn't as advanced as it is today. At the time, most people just copied other pro players' keybinds. I kid you not, but every top tier player at the time copied Myth's keybinds of ZXCV, which if you look at your keyboard, that's just the 4 keys on the bottom row next to Shift. Myth was the original building god, so because nobody had any idea of what keybinds to use, and there were no videos on the topic, people just copied whatever keybinds they saw fast builders use. I kind of copied Liquid Chap's keybinds, but I also put some of my own thought into it. Some smart pro players like 72 Hours were changing their keybinds from those really bad ones to better ones that spread each build bind out to a different finger. I did the same, and I put my wall on Q, floor on F, ramp on mouse button, and cone on X, which funnily enough is basically the same as the binds I have now except for my cone, which is on my other mouse button. What I really had trouble with was finding a good editing keybind. Currently I use E, which is in my opinion the best editing keybind, but back then nobody was using E for anything other than interact. If people had a different interact key, it was probably on F because they played H1. This meant I was stuck using a bad editing key that I wasn't comfortable with because I kind of ran out of good keybinds. I started off editing with Z, which was a really bad keybind, and then I went to C, which I used for like 8 or 9 months. If only a helpful YouTuber like that is Jarian guy told me to use scroll wheel to interact, then I could have put E on my edit key from early on and had way better binds. I also would have put my floor keybind on my mouse button had I known what I know now. Unfortunately though, that just wasn't the case. By the way, if you haven't seen my recent video on why pros are switching their keybinds, I explain the most optimal keybinds you can get now, which will help you understand my reasoning. This is all important though because the more optimal keybinds you have from the beginning, the more time you'll have to practice on them and build more muscle memory. I would have never had to switch my keybinds around and would have become a lot better, a lot faster. Even now, my keybinds can still be more optimal, but the keybinds I chose when I started kind of screwed me over. So just make sure you watch my recent keybinds video and optimize them as much as possible. The second thing I wish I knew when I switched over was that making myself uncomfortable then would make me a lot better in the long run. This goes for keybinds and just for more general keyboard and mouse gameplay. I had never played any computer game that used WASD in my life, meaning everything was new to me. I didn't know how to move forwards or to the side. I was a complete bot. With anything you're new at, you kind of subconsciously try to make yourself more comfortable while doing it, and that's exactly what happens when you switch over to playing keyboard and mouse. There's nothing weirder and just straight up more awkward than playing on a keyboard at first. Trust me when I say you're not alone if hitting different keybinds feels weird while holding down W or using your ring finger feels unnatural. I've been there, but what I wish I knew then was that it's okay to be that way. You want to make yourself uncomfortable in order to hit more keybinds and give yourself more options for what to use. You do not want to limit yourself and give yourself excuses to make playing feel less awkward in the beginning. A great example of this that I always get asked about is using number keybinds. I did a pretty good job of using these. I recommend always using number keybinds for your weapons. The problem is that using them can feel weird since they're a whole row away from WASD. They especially feel bad when you first switch over and you try hitting them while holding down W. When I first tried using 1 and 2, which you should be hitting with your ring finger, I literally had to look down and guide my finger over to it. But I stuck with it and I forced myself to do it and it paid off. I can now easily hit 1 and 2 without even thinking. You guys gotta understand, unless you're a guitar player, your fingers have absolutely no dexterity. Right now your fingers are not flexible at all and they have no muscle memory for moving anywhere other than just straight. With enough practice and stretching, your fingers will become more flexible and can reach farther on your keyboard. This tip is for more than just numbered keybinds though. You want to position your hands and your fingers where they're capable of hitting as many keybinds as possible. Even if it feels uncomfortable now, set up good habits for yourself early on. Like I said before, I did this well with my number keybinds, but I did poorly for hitting things with my thumbs and my left control with my pinky. If I had positioned my palm on my spacebar and my thumb over XEV, I'd be able to use them as a building keybind. I'd also be able to use shift as a keybind and left control as crouch. I never knew how I positioned my arms and my hand on my keyboard would be so important, and now that's what I'm used to and stuck with. Just make sure you're not holding yourself back by not wanting to be uncomfortable. You will be uncomfortable in the beginning, but that doesn't mean it'll still feel that way in a month. You'll build muscle memory and be a lot happier with all the different keys you can hit than if you try to be safe and only use what you're comfortable with in the beginning. Third thing I wish I knew, which will be short and sweet, is how important good peripherals and good gear is. If you're switching to PC and you have the money, get a solid PC that will allow you to get at least 144 FPS. It won't be in everyone's budget, but playing on high FPS with a high refresh monitor really is game changing. Everything is so much smoother and more responsive with higher frames. It's also important to get a good mouse and keyboard that fits you and that you will enjoy using. I have a whole video dedicated to helping you find those, so make sure to check that out. I'm not saying you have to go out and buy a $10,000 setup. I just want everyone coming from console to PC to be able to make the most out of their PC experience. So if you can afford it, I really do recommend making the most out of your setup. The fourth and final thing I wish I knew was how hard it was going to be and how long it was going to take to get good. Switching to keyboard and mouse is not easy at all. Over time you can and you will be better than you were on controller, but it won't take a week or even a month. It took me a solid 2 months before I felt I was as good as I was on controller, but even then I wasn't anywhere close to being as good as I am now. Things like your movement and your aim take time and practice. You can and you should use aim trainers in creative or Kovacs and practice your building and editing and creative courses, but there's no quick way to just snap your fingers and get good fast. There were so many times where I'd get on, get completely dumped on for an hour and be so close to calling it quits and going back to controller. It's going to be even harder now since everyone is so good and pubs are like World Cup matches. Do not quit though. Utilize all the resources you have to improve at your own pace. When I switched over, there was only playgrounds, so no creative at all. I would 1v1 my friends and practice my builds for hours. I also mainly played 50 vs 50 for the first month after switching over. I was just too scared to play solos and was sick of constantly dying when I did play them, so I just stuck to playing 50-50 with the other bots. Looking back, that's one thing that I don't think I would change. Most of you guys already have a ton of experience playing Fortnite on console, so all you need to do is practice your mechanics on PC, which you can do by grinding Playgrounds, Team Rumble, and Creative. It's still important to play the core game modes too, just because playing in real games and getting that experience is much different than Creative, but do it at your own pace. For some reason, everyone is so obsessed with getting good quickly, when your goal should be to become the best you can possibly be, no matter how long it takes. We all learn at different speeds. I think I'm a relatively fast learner, and it still took me about 2 to 3 months to be decent on keyboard and mouse. Just because some clown posted his 7-day console to PC progression, where on the 3rd day he's doing reverse 90s and all these other crazy advanced techniques, that doesn't mean you're behind if you cannot do the same things. Trust me when I say getting good fast is overrated. Aim to get good at whatever pace it takes, because the outcome is always the same. Keep grinding, don't get frustrated, and do not give up. Just make sure you come back and thank me in a month or two when you're a god on keyboard and mouse. So if you guys enjoyed this video and this helped your transition to PC, be sure to drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and to turn on post notifications. Shout out to all these boys using code Jarian. If you're not supporting anyone in the item shop, be sure to put in my code or anyone else's. Just make sure you're using a code. Otherwise, that's it from me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.